welcome back to The Price of Business. I'm your host, Chris Kelso, filling in for Kevin Price, who's out making the world a greater place today. Our next guest is Lowman Henry. He is with the Lincoln Institute and with American Radio Journal. Lowman, how you doing?
I'm doing well, Chris. How are you doing today?
Doing very well, thank you. You know, we want to tell our listeners, get out the vote. It's very important to get out the vote. But in the meantime, what we want to do is have you talk a little bit about the Lincoln Institute and American Radio Journal.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity. Yes, of course, it is Election Day, and here in Pennsylvania, which is where we're based, we have an exciting race for governor, so we're looking forward to seeing what happens here. I know you have a gubernatorial race in Texas as well. The Lincoln Institute is the organization that produces American Radio Journal, and here at the Lincoln Institute, we are a state-based public affairs organization. Recently, we celebrated our 20th year of doing public opinion surveys. We do polling, both of a statewide and local nature here in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. We also produce a number of websites. We are certainly a conservative, pro-business, pro-growth organization. And a number of years ago, we started a statewide public affairs radio program, Lincoln Radio Journal. We found that there was a real lack in Pennsylvania of statewide news coverage, and our program grew to be a weekly half-hour program, and it became phenomenally successful. We have over 90 radio stations in Pennsylvania that air it.
Oh, wow.
And as a result of that, we thought that the concept might work nationally. So 6 years ago, we started American Radio Journal.
You know, and one of the things you mentioned, you speak in my language, pro-conservative, pro-growth, by the way. You know, talk a little bit about, you obviously talked about the Lincoln Institute, but American Radio Journal. So how does that work, and how's that been going?
Well, American Radio Journal, Chris, is also a half-hour public affairs program. We now have over 200 radio stations around the country that air us. And I'm pleased to say that the state of Texas, we have more affiliates in Texas than any other state. Of course, Texas is a very large state, but also a very conservative one. So we have certainly been well received throughout Texas. Interestingly, we've also been fairly well received in California, which is not necessarily noted for being a state that is hospitable to conservative broadcasters, but we provide an alternative in that state as well. But American Radio Journal, we start out our program every week with a lead-off interview, and I select the topic for that. And it depends on what might be in the news that week, although a lot of times we do talk with senior researchers and national elected officials about various policy issues. We tap into organizations like the Heritage Foundation, the Cato Institute, American Enterprise Institute, and others to bring their experts on the show where we can talk about the key issues that are confronting the country and what alternatives there are to, first of all, what the federal government currently does and what you often hear from the mainstream news media.
Does the federal government really do anything for us right now?
Well, it's more what the federal government does to us.
Okay, absolutely.
And, of course, depending upon how the election goes, there could be a major change in Washington. Certainly, if Republicans are able to gain control of the U.S. Senate, we're going to see different activity out of Congress over the next couple of years. Probably gridlock will be continuing to a large degree, but
correct.
You're now, I think, going to start seeing some policy alternatives from Republicans. If Republicans win control of the Senate, Chris, it enables them to provide alternatives rather than just simply try to stop bad things from happening.
Right, which has been the case that we've been seeing here the past 6 years. Is unfortunately we've been trying to stop a lot of the bad policies that have been put in place or been tried to put in place here. And, it's very interesting. What are some of the hot topics? I mean, one of the things, obviously, you mentioned from California to Texas, which you're probably going to see a varying degree of interest right there, as you mentioned. But what are some of the hot topics you've been seeing here over the past 6 months that have been dominating the radio and your show?
The big issue has clearly been the Affordable Care Act, or Obamacare.
Right.
That has been a major source of discussion. We also talk a lot about budgets and spending, about state tax about federal tax policy. We recently did a program. Sometimes we leave policy and go to major events in the news. We recently did a program on Ebola. This coming week, we're going to be talking about these new ride-sharing companies, Uber and Lyft,
okay,
and how they're transforming the public transportation industry. We also have a segment that we run every week on our program, Chris. Andy Roth, who is with the Club for Growth, a pro-growth organization in Washington, D.C., Andy comes on every week, and Andy keeps a very close track of all the major U.S. Senate and U.S. Senate and congressional races all around the country. And he keeps track of the polling, what's happening in those races. So we get a lot of insight from Andy on what's happening with these races around the country. And when Congress is in session, his organization Daily is up on the Hill, so we get a real insider's view as to what's happening. And then to really bring the states into it, we have a segment called Watchdog Radio Report. There's a website, watchdog.org. They have deployed a network of state-based reporters in about 30 states around the country. And on that report, they pull in their reporters from individual states when there's something occurring in those states that would be of interest to a national audience. So as a result, we get a lot of really good state-by-state information as well.
You know, and that's really interesting. You know, one of the things, as you mentioned, you know, we talked about at the beginning of the segment, get out the vote. But, you know, there's a lot of activity going on. There's a lot of information. There's a lot of misinformation that actually takes place out there. And so it's important to have an organization like you, both with the Lincoln Institute and American Radio Journal, to show what's going on and provide these resources. One of the things I want to provide, because we're going to be coming up against a break again right now, is how can we get a hold of you?
Our website is AmericanRadioJournal.com, and you can listen to the program right on the website if you can't tune in at a convenient time to your local radio station. It's AmericanRadioJournal.com, and our main website is LincolnInstitute.org.
That's LincolnInstitute.org, and also the American Radio Journal. Lowman Henry, thank you very much. Appreciate you being on board with The Price of Business today. For all those listening, we still have one more segment coming up, so stay tuned, and we'll be right back.